I agree. I mean, I remember when I was a teacher and they used to want to I used to put people in teams, in positions at year 3 and year 4, and year 5. They'd be in those positions and I came in one year, changed it all up, got them moving around, playing different positions, and we'd go and play other schools and they would give us a good thumping because they all knew their positions a lot better than we did. But by the time we were all 13 years old, we were the best, and we were beating all the schools because we understood the game.
Welcome to Coaching Cards. I'm Mark Leigh and I'm joined by my colleagues Sharon Muxworthy and Paul Holder. Today we're going to be talking about individual tactics. Let's see what we've got on the first card. So question to both of you, what does the term individual tactics mean and why are they important?
I think tactics, if you ask many coaches what tactics means to them, they might go straight towards formations and 11v11 or 9v9. This is how we're going to play against that group. But there are tactics of the individual, right? In other words, tactics just means getting your own way, basically. How do we help kids to help them become effective in games by getting their own way, both attacking and defending, in and out of possession? So, for example, an individual tactic of a forward against a defender might be just push it past them and run. That's a tactic. But why is it a tactic? Because the defender is slower, or is it a tactic just because he or she can do it? And the idea is you match that up against opponents. What are they good at? What are they not good at? How can I get the upper hand over you?
Yeah, and I'd go on to say as well, one of the key things for those individual tactics to happen, the environment you create as a coach for your players to feel they can experiment and try things, trial and error, to try and work out what are going to be the best tactics for them to employ against certain opposition. In a 1v1, as you said, is it pace, is it size, is it speed, is it I can see pictures of where this game could go? Different players will draw on their own individual tactics as they get to know themselves.
The more the players are adept in technical skills, the wider the avenue for tactics. Yeah. So, for example, this player I said that pushes past and run, if he or she used their first touch as a tactic to either tempt the defender or to go past them. So that first touch of the ball is tactical.
Yeah.
Their movement is tactical. So you could argue that pretty much everything they do is tactical. There's an argument to say that what do you do on the pitch that isn't tactical? I mean, if you took cricket, for example, sledging is a tactic. It's nothing to do with technique. So maybe tactics needs to be seen in a much broader context.
Yeah, no, that's fair, Noddy. And I think, to expand that analogy from cricket, if you were to play tennis against me, you'd quickly figure out, if you played to my backhand, you're probably going to win.
I would definitely win.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be the case. So I think it's, to pick up on that point about better techniques, better tactics, that would be a key phrase, wouldn't it? Improving individuals make better teams, improving techniques make better tactics. I think probably the other perspective, picking up on Mux's point about environment, for me, often I work with coaches or I work with players and ask them, so what was effective about what you've just done? You've played a 3v2, trying to score a goal, and they'll go, oh yeah, just keep going. Or they'll come up with cliches. And I suppose it's that emphasis on giving them lots of goes at problem solving in a game context, something that they would experience in a game, linking training to match days, and actually spend the time between times, let them have a go, let them have lots of goes, and then just unpicking, well, what's that player like? Are they left-footed or right-footed? Do they tend to come inside? What are their traits? Do they tend to come inside or do they tend to want to go outside? And have you recognised that? And again, like any skill, that only comes with practice. And I think sometimes we're bogged down in physical outcomes, contacts on the ball, which are important, but that tactical understanding and giving them repetition of that, I think is probably key.
Competence will breed confidence.
Yeah.
And if you're competent at something, you're likely to take risks and you're likely to say, I can do this. The thing I think is that we could help by not playing in tight areas all the time, where the kids are fighting for the ball. and the ball's changing hands all the time. Sometimes we might need to play on bigger areas. I'm not saying huge areas, where I've got time to look at you as a defender. I've got space to operate in all round you, rather than just one there. And I can then say, right, you might have to run a bit further, right? But I've got time and space.
Yeah, I had a practical example of that a while ago, working with an under-10s coach, and we did some work and then set up a small-sided game. I think it was like 5v5. And I'm looking at it going, this area is way too big. I've got this wrong. Physically, the kids were battered. And I was like, we need to change that. Called them in, do you want to make the pitch smaller? No, Mark, we're fine. And the reason they were fine is they would put up with the physical load for the fact they had more time and space on the ball. Exactly what you're talking about.
I think
that's a good way.
coaches can ask some really good questions of players to help them think tactically. Like, for example, a great question to ask defenders is, what are you going to let the attacker do and what are you not going to let him do? Yes? Now, it might sound that's a simple question. Actually, when you think about it, you go, I'm not going to let him do that. Why aren't you going to let him do that? I'm going to let him do that. So they might let a pass go across and they might let a pass go back, but they're not going to let him turn, for example.
Yeah.
Why? Well, that's a tactic.
Yeah.
And then your technique and your skill level will determine whether that tactic works and all that. But we could ask that question. We could ask questions of wide players. When are you going to cross early? When are you going to cross late? We could ask of all players who are in possession of the ball, when are you going to play to feet and when are you going to play to space? So rather than put topics down so much, but ask questions about when are you going to do this? How are you going to do this?
Yeah, so it's really important, isn't it, then to develop individual tactics. We as coaches really need to frame the right questions and ask the right questions of them so that they're actually thinking about that as they're playing to get the advantage they want in the game.
I don't know about you, but if you asked coaches how many players are in a team, I asked this the other day, someone went 9, and that's because they take 9 aside. 11, no one said 3 or 4. And you can have a team of 2 and still do tactical work with them. You know, tactical work is the same in 3v3. You've still got to outwit your opponent.
Yeah.
You know, how are you going to outwit them rather than outrun them?
Yeah.
You may have outrunning them might be an option, but it's probably, that's what I mean. We have to think about that team tactics and individual tactics are present every time there's an opposition. All the time, even in 1v1s. They're there.
Good. Should we take another card?
So are they relevant to players in all positions? I think we've just looked at that. And if so, can you paint a picture of what individual tactics can look like across the pitch, both in and out of possession?
Yeah.
So can you sort of give some examples maybe from the professional game where you've seen that as well?
Yeah, I'd go from a grassroots coaching perspective and I'd start with the goalkeeper. So I think we're getting much better at including goalkeepers in the practice. I think traditionally goalkeepers were either go over there and work with a goalkeeper coach or work with the subs or whatever, and you're just knocking balls and it's just that repetition, which I guess for goalkeepers' confidence and, for want of a better term, getting their eye in is important, or getting the sticks while we smash balls at you and it's cannon fodder. So I think this idea of including them within the team and that recognition of which spaces to protect and why. So, are we protecting the space, are we protecting the area, are we protecting the goal? And, if there's spacing behind and they're going for a 1v1, do I stay put because I think my defender might recover, or if I wait long enough, this striker might have a bad touch, which helps me, or do I need to go and deal with it straight away? So I think if we start with the goalkeeper, for out of possession, it's that, do we build in enough opportunity for them to work on that tactical understanding? Because once they're at a certain level of proficiency, they can catch and throw and kick and dive and save. Most mistakes from goalkeepers are to do with decision making, and some of that will be their individual decision making, some of it will be their communication with the team. So, if you don't ever include them in training with the rest of the back four or the back unit, it's going to be really difficult for them to do that on match day when the stress level goes up, the tariff for making a mistake goes up. And again, for a midfielder to make a mistake, often it's just part of the game. Oftentimes for a goalkeeper to make a mistake, it results in a goal. So there you're linking the technical, the tactical, and also the social and the psychological. So I think that would be a good thing to share with coaches.
Yeah. I suppose what we've seen as well, individual tactics, as well as how perhaps some clubs you see the full-backs or even any member of the defender being sort of using that scanning and having the capability to swing a long ball forward. I'm thinking the other day when I think it was Kanate did a lovely cross ball to Diaz just behind, and it just dropped nice just behind, and that was a really good individual tactic in that he linked up with another player, but he had the scanning and the technical ability to put that pass in at that time to create that scoring opportunity.
I watched Haaland the other day, who's playing, and he just waits for the centre half to be drawn towards the ball, and then he disappears into space. Right. Now that's learnt and practiced, and it's instinctive. With the younger ones, we have to help them with the idea of, well, what will happen? Cause and effect.
That's fine when you're talking about the best players in the world, male or female, at top level of the game. For a lot of coaches, particularly those working in grassroots, but also in performance environments, the players haven't yet got those capabilities. So I think what we sometimes do is go, oh, we won't do that because they haven't got the technical capabilities or the physical capabilities. So I think one strategy I would share, and it's widely used by the FA and others, is sometimes on a micro pitch, play on a smaller area, but play with hands, so that players get to understand the movement, the opportunities, the connections, and what you're taking away is that requirement for them to be thinking about the technical elements at that moment in time, and then that ability to combine, where you're building their repertoire of when might a 1-2 be an option, when might an overlap be an option, when might an up, back and through be an option. But you're not doing that all as if it's like a taught lesson. You're gently drip feeding it in. So kind of almost like a mile of practice and a yard or an inch of instruction from the coach. Because that longer term view means that we as coaches can allow them to experiment, to try stuff, to fall in love with the game. And then the learning becomes much more implicit or unconscious, where they're doing it without thinking about it.
You mentioned wall passes, things like that. And one of our responsibilities to kids to understand, we talk about combinations. It's a long word, right? And if you ask a kid, you're talking about a wall pass, a give and go, and you say to a kid, why is it powerful? And ask the kid, why does that work? And they'll say, it's 2 against 1. Mainly they say, and I'll say, so you're overloading them. Same with overlaps and underlaps, those sort of combinations. You're overloading them, which is a tactic. And they don't know their tactics, but they are. Yeah. The other thing I saw the other day from a wide player is the ball comes over, and his first touch, it was, I can't remember where it was, his first touch was on the outside of the foot nearest the defender. So he just hooked his ball, and his first touch was there, and the defender went like that to go and get it. So he tempted him with his foot and then went. What we would say is, no, take it on the right foot, on the outside of him. No. And he went, no, I'll take it on the one nearest the defender. So tactics has moved on at an individual level. You're getting players now receiving the ball and tempting players to come and get it. Because of the physical abilities and the players, you have to be just that little bit ahead. So you've got to have a bit of deviousness in you. Like when do you switch defenders on and off? So forwards like to stand still sometimes. Thierry Henry used to operate behind the line and stuff like that, and you'll see Lionel Messi said he doesn't have to run all the time. He'll choose when he runs. And it's that choice that's tactical.
How can coaches support players to recognise the strengths and weaknesses of themselves and their opponent to help them gain an advantage?
So I think first and foremost, recognising what they're good at and focusing on the good things. We tend to have a deficit model in this country, in our culture, and certainly in football, where we'll say, the player can't do this, can't do that. What can she do?
So how would you do that as a coach at the start of the season, maybe?
Literally, I could watch them for 5 minutes and go, she's good at that, she's good at that, she's good at that, I'm going to build on that. And then I might have a conversation with them. So you actually label it for them. So then they start to define themselves as, this is something I'm good at. From a motivation point of view, it's much easier and better to start by focusing on what they're good at. And then I suppose is designing practices that bring out those elements again and again and again. Now, from a deliberate practice point of view, there is a point in time where you need to work on things you're not so good at, but that's much harder. But certainly the starting point would be focus on their individual strengths. Yeah. And again, have that breakdown of, it's you against your direct opponent, and and we're working on the individual stuff before the team tactics.
It's all about. We've also got to recognise that there are some core skills that I don't matter what your individual strength is, you need to be good at these, or receiving skills and passing, for example.
Yeah.
Again, if you've got more than one person, will involve passing.
Yeah.
Ball manipulation and stuff like that. So some would be better at things, but there are some essentials. You have to be able to pass the football somewhere at some time. So that is like, how much are we doing on helping players to get those core skills right? You can add your strengths and as you go along, right? And quite rightly, we'll recognise that some players prefer to dribble past people and others are not very good for whatever reason, and they prefer to shift the ball to somebody else. Right. And then you probably see it a lot in defending. Yes, that some, as they get older, you'll see the defensive traits in people, and you say, do you know what? He or she loves defending. But I think sometimes we try and look for that too early. We just need to, those strengths may not manifest themselves till later. What we might do is put them in positions and then look for strengths within that position just to make it convenient.
Yeah.
And actually, what we probably should be doing is keeping your options open for a lot longer and say, yeah, they've got defensive traits, they like that. And then they gravitate towards things. So I think there's an element of positional stuff. I think we go position specific too early. That might be because we play 11v11 too early, and therefore we have to say, well, I've got to have a right back, I've got to have a left back, and blah, blah, blah. And then someone will fill that void, and then you will look for strengths within that.
No, I agree. I mean, I remember when I was a teacher, and they used to want to put people in teams in positions at year 3 and year 4, and year 5. And they'd be in those positions, and I came in one year, changed it all up, got them moving around, playing different positions, and we'd go and play other schools, and they would give us a good thumping because they all knew their positions a lot better than we did. But by the time we were all 13 years old, we were the best, and we were beating all the schools because we understood the game. They had their individual tactics for different parts of the pitch, and
the core skills should dominate programs.
Yeah.
Like striking the ball properly, defending, and we must bring out the fact that actually you haven't got the ball more often than you have. If you see what I mean. Yeah. So defending is really important.
Yeah.
So positioning in defending is really important, and if you do nothing else in defending, work on positioning, because that's not hard to do. Just work on positioning, and funnily enough, you can work on the pressing and the other bits later. But if you get the idea of positioning, then that helps you. And I think coaches jump into things other than the core skills, and say, no, they need to be good at these. These are essential. And the better they are at the core skills, the individual tactics come out. They'll play longer, they'll be on the pitch longer, they'll be more effective. It's just keeps snowballing.
It enables them to scan and look, and if they can scan and look rather than constantly worried about keeping control of something or not being able to do what they want to with the ball, it opens it up for them, doesn't it?
The scanning's interesting because you're only scanning for opportunities and threats.
Yeah.
So
true.
That's all you're scanning for. You're not scanning for anything else. You're not plane spotting or anything like that.
No.
So you're on the pitch. So if you're not got opposition, there's no threat. So when you're doing practices that have no threat on the ball, it's really hard for kids to practice scanning. That's why you see in passing drills, you get coaches saying, no, swivel your head, swivel your head, swivel your head. And I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that because I've done it and we've all done it. So get used to it and you go, do you know what? If you put a defender in there, he's going to...
There's a consequence. There's a
Yeah.
reason
There's
for
the
doing
threat.
it. Yeah.
So we have to put the jeopardy in order for them to do the scanning stuff. And the scanning stuff will say, like, am I going to invite the pressure or not? Starts that process. But the threat, it's all about opportunities and threats.
Yeah.
So that's why you do practices which are directional and got goals. There's opportunities. Opportunities to go that way. Opportunities to play forward. The more you do that, they will search for those opportunities. And we're looking for players who, once we get that idea, that's all they're scanning for.
Yeah.
Their movement changes and a lot of
So generally speaking, on that point, coaches can influence players in one of two ways. Either intervene to go, scan, I want you to be on the swivel, I want you to be checking your shoulders, or you can influence what players do by practice design. So one is explicit, me as a coach going, think about doing this. The other is implicit, which we talked about right from the beginning, by just adjusting the practice to go, now you need to do that, because if you don't, you're going to lose the ball.
You've got to help them to scan, to help them what to look for. But in the end, it's a natural thing. Because if I'm not being funny, but if I'm playing a game and someone tackles me all the time, or so, and well, I played quite high rugby and not high rugby, but high level rugby, right? And the coach said to me, he said, not being funny, he said, if you don't learn to catch the ball properly, you will not see the defender coming at you and you will get hurt. Yes, he said, in order for you to scan to see the threat, you need to catch the ball. Yeah. Now he was saying get your technique right, and then the scanning. He said, don't look at the defender, look at the ball, right, like that. What I'm saying is it's interlinked with techniques, and scanning's a natural thing. If there's a threat coming on, I'm going to run away. If it's an opportunity, I'm going to go, well, there it is. So we need to do more of that, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go next question.
Yeah.
So next question. So how do you link individual tactics to skill? So what is the difference? So tactics would be a way of doing it. So what I'm going to do. Skill would be how I'm going to do it, possibly.
Both of them work together to enable players to execute the techniques.
Yeah.
If you take finishing, the end bit of the finishing, a lot of finishing practices, balls go over the bar and all that, and everyone gets unlucky. And then you look back and you go, it's a simple thing. He or she was not looking at the ball when they kicked it. And there's evidence, you watch the top players when they're striking a ball to finish, they've seen all the picture. They're then looking at the ball. So what their tactics does, and it's a very, you can blend these, what their individual tactics and skill does is enable them to execute those techniques. Gives them headspace to look at the football.
Yeah.
So Ollie Watkins the other day was playing in against Aston Villa. He peeled off the defender. I think he was looking at him. He's come off the defender. That's movement, right? The skill was at the time. This timing was good. Yeah. So he's come off and it's obviously going to be good. So his first touch, and then he's looking at the ball. Contact. He got a bit of a deflection. It went in the goal. It's fine, but he's done all that bit. He's worked hard to get to that position, and now it's contact. And a lot of kids, if you're looking at finishing, for example, and I can't tell you how many times don't hear much coaches saying, look at the football when you kick it. And earn the right to look at the football, because if you don't, it only has to be a few centimetres out and it's not going to be in the go where you want it to go. So I think that is where, like in finishing, where your tactics and skill are merged. But they're there. The whole reason you use tactics is so that you can execute techniques. In order to execute your techniques, you're going to need good movement, you're going to need good tactics.
So what advice can you give coaches to help them link individual tactics to the tactics of the wider team?
So I'd probably start by going back to what's the purpose of the game, scoring goals, stopping goals, and then how does my individual bit help us achieve that? So, priority order, the most important bit is the scoring of goals. So we know from an analysis point of view, without going too deep into it, that happens in a certain area close to goal. So then how do we get ourselves in a position where we can score a goal? So whether it's crosses, whether it's through balls, whether it's dribbles, all of those elements become relevant. And then thinking about, what's the next priority? So ball in behind the defence, so ball between the centre halves, ball behind the centre halves and fullback, ball in front of the defence but beyond the midfield. And then all the time we're thinking about, well, what's my contribution to that? So you almost create a framework or priority order of, as a team, this is what we're trying to achieve. How does your bit contribute to that?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. But with the older ones, you're going to get to things like, right, we want to show them outside. Yeah. We want to play a high line. Yeah. We want to go +1 at the back, or you'll have team tactical thing, and the idea is you make it work. You 11, 14, or however you make that work. But whatever happens, we're showing them outside. This is the way we want to play. So you get teams with game models, don't you?
Yeah.
You get game models saying this is the way we want to set up. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. The thing is those game models shouldn't dominate in the younger ages. That's particularly but it's how then the players bring their individual tactics to make that work.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Yeah. Do you have any top tips to help coaches work on individual tactics on match day?
Yeah, the most obvious thing is set them individual challenges, which can link from training to match day. So an individual challenge related to my strengths or development areas, some individual development plan, individual action plan, whatever it may be, is probably the first place to start. So you might have individual priorities, in possession, out possession, team priorities, but then also something that relates to whether it's work rate, whether it's support, whether it's communication. So you've got an overall objective for the team. The difficulty with that is you have much less control. So for example, if we're working on dominating possession and I'm working on 1v1s, depending on the quality of the opposition and how the game goes and the environment and the conditions, might not be conducive to that. So sometimes it's that balance of, in training, focus on development and focusing on those individual skills. On match days, figure out how to win the game or how to be effective. And then we link the two and come back to that in training. So I think having those individual objectives is really useful as a starting point, but then you've just got to deal with the opponent and the conditions in front of you to try and win the game.
I think you can chunk the game up.
I do remember, when we used to play in sort of 3/3 sometimes, and there was a real opportunity for that, and because we'd rotate the team a lot. Whoever was off, it was always there, they were looking at the player, they would be going in, are they right-footed, are they left-footed, where do they tend to distribute most with, which foot, all these things. And I think those are little things that any grassroots coach can do to help their players start to learn and understand when they're not on the pitch as well. Ideally, what you say in the first 10-15 minutes, key thing is try and keep our shape, this is how we're going to play, but I want you to learn as much as you can about your opposition player, and what can you do can you work out how to get the better of them. If we can't, at half time we'll come together, we'll have a discussion, we'll have a plan, and we'll try and work something out. But yeah, I think that real ownership of you've got the trust in that player to work out that as well, that's a lot.
It's powerful.
Really powerful.
And what you don't get, and I'm sure you say, and I don't get this with kids, is they're saying playing 4-3-3 and that's it. And saying, well, what if you could benefit by playing 3 at the back, 5 in midfield and 2? Why don't you just change it now? Change it now.
Yeah.
Don't wait till 6 weeks down the line where you go, that's when we're playing 3-5-2. Why don't you say, do you know what, tactically, if we do this, and the reason we're doing this is because of this, kids will start, okay, so we're playing 3 at the back, and the reason for that is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And so we can be brave with the team tactics, which helps them think tactically about pretty much everything they do.
Yeah, because I think you've touched on there. Kids are tactically savvy because of technology, because of watching the game on telly and all of that analysis. And again, I think that discipline of figuring it out and what's she good at, how you're going to beat them, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's a good discipline for coaches as well, because coaches often get caught up in the melee of the game without actually thinking about it.
Sometimes you're tempted to ask a lot of questions of kids, and they're not in school, they're playing football. So sometimes you have to tell them, by the way, he's right-footed, you need to shut that out, right? Or she's quicker than you, you need to do something about it. And then don't be afraid to shortcut the learning. It's not all about questions and now how can we do this and how can we do that. And by that time, you know, the game
particularly if they're under
gone.
pressure anyway.
Pardon?
Particularly if they're under pressure
Coaches
anyway.
need to get the balance between, because basically you want them to be as effective as they can in this game. Whether they win or not is in the lap of the gods. But so sometimes you have to shortcut that. There's nothing wrong with that.